I friggin' love that intro. I love jamming out every time, and I know I say it every time I go live, and you're going to get sick of me saying it, and that's okay, because I'm going to keep saying it. That is awesome. Thank you, Lonnie. Holy crap, I am excited to chat today with my good buddy Adam and my new good buddy Bruce from the UK and Rethink Drink. We are going to talk the Sinclair Method today, and I think this is so important. As a guy who went through the abstinence model myself and the struggles that I had early on, I really think this medicine and this method is something that can really, I don't want to say necessarily make things easier, but it's definitely a way to approach this thing in a different angle. And I'm super excited for Bruce to share and really enlighten us about this thing. If you haven't seen Bruce's stuff on TikTok, it is awesome. I watch it all the time. He's one of my favorite follows on TikTok. Bruce, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, and thank you for having me. You'll have to give me an intro like that to my wife next time, because she would have a slightly different opinion. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's great to be here, and thanks for what you guys do as well.
Oh, man, I'm so excited. Adam, thanks for co-hosting today, my friend. How are you?
I'm just here for the ride. I'm here to listen with you. So,
all right.
Go learn.
Well, let's start off right to the point here, Bruce. What is the Sinclair Method? And well, let's just start with that. What is it exactly?
Okay, I'll give you a brief explanation. The simple way to describe it, or the simplest way that I've come to describe it, is it's an alcohol reduction program leading to controlled drinking or abstinence using a medication called naltrexone and a 1-to-1 reduction program. That's probably the succinct way of explaining it. There's obviously a lot more to it than that. It's not just a case of taking a pill and everything, you ride off into the sunset and everything works. It's built on 30 years of research carried out in Finland that shows that when people drink alcohol, it produces a huge amount of endorphin in the brain. And it's that endorphin that people become addicted to. And if you can, short explanation, if you can regulate and control the endorphin, what will then happen is you can then regulate and control the level of drinking, which then gives you the space and the freedom to deal with everything else. That every single person is individual, which is nice about the Sinclair Method, that you can then, some people will need additional therapy, some people might not need therapy, some people will need habitual change, some people need to learn how to deal in social circumstances. There's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with it. That's why the support side of it is so important. But the medication is the crux between everything that I've worked with in the past, and it deals with the process as a neurological condition with medication in the first instance, which then allows the space to do what everyone else is doing in recovery circles.
Right. So, what does naltrexone do exactly? So, like the way that I've explained it to people, and it may be a poor way to do it, so I'm going to get your way of doing it. Like, a lot of people say there's hereditary, there's an extra euphoric feeling that alcoholics get from drinking that normal drinkers don't get. Talk a little bit about exactly what the medication itself does, if you would.
How geeky do you want me to get?
Let's be geeky, man.
The mechanism of action, but
I want to believe I'm and an alien back here. I'm geeky as hell, man. Let's do this thing.
So it's what was the question? What naltrexone is doing? Yeah. Okay. So when all the research that's coming out now is showing that the majority of people who end up struggling with AUD, they have a hereditary predisposition. The majority of people we work with who struggle with AUD, alcohol use disorder, there's a history of it in the family. Most people, not everybody, but most people. Now, the very simple way to describe that is that some people's brains get a much higher reward from alcohol than other people. So when you drink alcohol, it goes into your stomach, out the lining of your stomach, into your blood system, around your body and up to your brain. When it gets to the brain, it forces the brain to produce a huge amount of additional endorphin. The brain produces endorphin naturally at, they can measure it at or they have measured it at 95 nanograms of endorphin. When you drink alcohol, it goes up to about 1,000. So it goes up tenfold. It's huge. Now, when you bear in mind that endorphin, I always recommend to people, go and do some research on endorphin and what it does and how it affects the brain and the body. And endorphin is a neurotransmitter. It's a chemical that makes you feel good. It gives you that buzz when you drink. It's an anesthetic. It will numb you out as well. So when you're drinking alcohol, the brain is producing this massive dump of endorphin, and it's making you feel really, really good when you drink. So the reason that every single person consumes alcohol, the only reason they do it is the pursuit of that endorphin. You want the buzz, you want the fun, you want the numbing effect if you're going through a hard time, or if you're going through a trauma, or you're going through a divorce. You want something to numb you out, to make you feel better. So you drink alcohol, but most people think they stop at the alcohol stage and they don't go on to looking at the biology and saying, well, actually, it's the endorphin that's making me feel good, not the alcohol. And so when the brain is getting that massive amount of endorphin, that's where the addiction comes from. So the reason why people drink alcohol is the pursuit of that endorphin. The Dr. Sinclair, who did the original research, he said that alcohol is a learned behavior. And I could never understand what he meant by that. And I said, what do you mean a learned behavior? And the more I studied it, the more I realized that every time that you've consumed alcohol since you were a kid and you've got this huge endorphin reward, the brain learns through what we call neurological pathways that every time you drink alcohol, you're going to get this huge reward. So when you're having a really good day and you're happy and want to have good fun and you have a drink and the brain gets this huge reward, the brain learns, when I'm happy and I do this with alcohol, I'm going to get this reward. Then when I'm sad or I'm upset or all the different emotions that come into it, happy, sad, frustrated, anxious, and I consume alcohol and I get this huge reward, it makes me feel better from the endorphin. So that endorphin, the brain will then learn over a period of time, every time that you have a drink and you get this huge reward under every given situation, the brain learns, this is how I make myself feel better. So when you do that on a repeated basis, and especially someone has a hereditary predisposition where the brain is getting a much higher reward anyway, they're more likely to have a few more drinks than anyone else would in that scenario. So therefore, through the repeated behavior, they then become addicted, not to alcohol, but they become addicted to endorphin. So when we hear the word, I hate the word alcoholic, and it's not because I'm modern and want to change all that kind of stuff. It's because it doesn't describe it correctly. It makes people think that alcohol is the issue. Now, alcohol is creating the endorphin, but if we need to use an ick word or expression, if we need to use an ick word, we need to use the word endorphaholic. People are addicted to endorphins. So, so the addiction, why we drink is endorphin. The addiction is endorphin. And the fascinating thing that Dr. Sinclair found was relapse, or the reason why people stop and can't stay stopped, is endorphin. And when I got my head around that one, my background was rehab center management, and we watched relapse after relapse after relapse. And I was thinking, there's got to be a better way than doing this. And then I started to realize that when the brain, let's say someone's been drinking, let's say 5 years as a low level, someone's been drinking heavily or for 5 years, endorphin, the brain gets used to that level. So everyone, for the years and years and years that we've gone through recovery, everyone has said that the solution to the recovery is stop drinking, remove the alcohol. And it makes sense that alcohol's the problem. Let's get the alcohol out of the equation, and then all of a sudden everything will be fixed. Now, you guys know that doesn't really happen. No. But when you remove the alcohol, always remember you're removing the endorphin from the brain as well. So when you remove that endorphin, that then creates something called the alcohol deprivation effect. And what that is that puts the brain and the body into craving mode. So if you ever hear someone talking about I'm craving a drink, I'm desperate for a drink, or someone who's been drinking and just stopped in the last 2-3 months, and they say, I'm craving alcohol, they're not craving alcohol, they're craving endorphin. And it's that removal of the alcohol. So your brain goes from having endorphin maybe on a daily basis for a year, 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it is, or on a regular basis, to all of a sudden not getting it at all. And then that puts it into craving. And the reason that people relapse is because of craving, and it's the craving for the endorphin. So I thought, wow, okay. So why we drink is endorphin, the addiction is endorphin, and the relapse now is endorphin as well. I'm thinking, wow, okay. So then with naltrexone is classified as a receptor blocker or a receptor inhibitor. So when you drink alcohol, it produces the endorphin hits the receptor, and at that point, that's when you get the buzz and the reward. So what naltrexone is doing, it's a receptor blocker, and it sits on the opiate receptor in the brain. And as a result of that, when you then consume alcohol, you take your medication an hour before you drink, the naltrexone sits on that receptor as a blocker. It works as a filter. You then drink alcohol. It increases you get the huge amount of endorphin that then comes to hit the receptor, and it lowers the reward that the brain is getting from the huge amount of endorphin. So it lowers the reward. Now, the crazy thing with the Sinclair method is, for the process to work, you actually have to drink. And this is where people
Minds
don't
explode. Minds explode hearing that. I heard them.
We fall out with a few people on this one. But this is why you actually have to drink, because going back to alcohol, AUD is a learned behavior through repeated basis. You can actually unlearn the addictive behavior by taking the medication and drinking alcohol. Take the medication, drink, take the medication, drink, take the medication and drink. Each time you do it, the brain gets a lower reward. And bear in mind, you're going to do it in lots of different scenarios: at a ball game, on a night out with friends, at a barbecue, when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're anxious. You're going to have a drink and you get the lower reward instead of the higher reward. And then the brain learns, it builds up new neurological pathways, and the brain then learns, and it associates this alcohol with this reward instead of this reward. And as a result of that, then through habitual change and through a gradual reduction program, we can reduce people right the way down to controlled drinking, where they can then go from a bottle of scotch a day down to a glass of wine 2-3 times a week. And there's no craving, there's no white knuckling it, there's no struggle, and there's no battle. But when you treat it as that process, it's just, I have been 6.5 years down the track, and I'm still more blown away today than I was when I first sort of studied it.
It just makes so much freaking sense to me. And I've told this story before, in one of my first true attempts at going abstinent, my ritual was the same. I would stop on the way home, I'd get my bottles, and then I'd go down to the basement. As soon as I got down to the basement, when I got home, I'd crack it open and I'd slam my first half pint.
Yeah.
And my first time I did this, and I actually had 2 clients come and do the same thing recently. I went down to the basement. I had no alcohol, but I held my hand out like I had it there. I twisted the top, and I went through the whole motion, and I felt something. I really felt something. I was like, ooh, just for a second. And I thought I was kind of crazy, and I shared this with some of the clients I work with, and 2 of them came back and said they did the same thing. And it's like the brain is recognizing the behavior, and it's releasing these feel goods. Like, oh, here we go. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that crazy?
Just the thought as well, that you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. When someone is fighting the craving, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, fight, fight, fight. The minute that someone makes the decision, they hit what we call in this country the stuff it button. You hit the stuff it button, you say, right, stuff it, I can't do this anymore, I'm going to go have a drink. The minute you do that, peace. And that's it's a bit of psychological, but it's also the brain at that point will release endorphin at that stage. And you'll feel the relaxation of it coming along. And then when you do have the drink, the brain gets the huge reward, if you haven't drunk for a week or a month or however long someone's drunk for, the brain is still in the mode of the addiction. So it's craving that endorphin. And also you're in a state of deprivation. So when you then feed the body, again, if you've been through that, if when someone relapses, you'll hear some people say, I get this rush that goes from the top of my head right the way through my body. And they can't explain it and they don't know what it is, but it's endorphin. That's the endorphin going through the body. And it's at the endorphin that people get from alcohol, and this just blew my mind when I heard it, is the equivalent to heroin. And I would put, I've worked in rehab center management with alcohol and drugs, and I had a drug issue for 10 years. It's easier to come off drugs than it is alcohol, unless it's the heroin level. I think heroin and alcohol are the same bracket. And that's purely because the endorphin levels are exactly the same.
Yeah, and I share this with clients too. When I would take that first half pint and slam it, it was instant gratification. That might be the wrong word for it, but it was definitely, to use an AA term, ease and comfort. Before there was any way, it was even in my stomach and starting to be absorbed by the body. I felt instantly better. Instantly. Yeah. Makes so
That's
much
because
sense.
the brain is craving that, or has been craving the endorphin whilst you stopped. And if you imagine when you go to the gym or anything that produces natural endorphin, going to the gym, run, sex, all those things produce natural endorphin up to a level of 95 nanograms. So if you're then having alcohol and you're getting 1,000, you then wonder why people would rather have a drink than go to the gym.
Right.
Because it's like, hang on, I'm going to get 1,000 reward by sitting on my couch just going like that, or I can go and put an hour's hard work and slog into a gym and not get it starts to deaden the natural endorphin rewards. And it's a progressive, Dr. Sinclair called it a progressive process. You drink alcohol, anyone can be dependent, and that's why they changed the name to alcohol use disorder, because it's a sliding scale. And there's a lot of scenarios out there where people say, again, another reason why we don't like the word alcoholic is it puts someone into a bracket or into a level where they categorize people. And so many people say to me, how much is too much, Bruce? And I said, that's abstinent-based thinking. It's black and white. Abstinent-based thinking is black and white. You've got a problem or you don't. I'm an alcoholic or I'm not. Or you drink or you don't drink. Where alcohol dependency is a progressive process. You can be dependent on drinking twice a week. You can be dependent on drinking a bottle of vodka a day. Right. It's a progressive process, and you take it away, the brain will crave it at whatever level it is.
Yeah. All right. This is awesome. There's so much information, Bruce. Thank you. So if you don't mind, there's a hot topic going around all social media. It's dopamine. What is the difference between dopamine and endorphins?
So it's quite a complicated thing. Dopamine does a very similar thing to endorphin. So it gives you the buzz, it gives you the reward. One creates long-term behavior, is the simple way to describe it. One is an instant gratification. So dopamine gives you the instant gratification. And yes, dopamine is produced when you drink alcohol. So you hear a lot of people say, well, I get it a lot on my TikToks. People say, well, no, it's dopamine that's the issue. And I say, yes, dopamine is involved, but you've also got GABA that's involved. You've also got glutamate that's involved. You've got GLP-1, which is a very popular thing at the moment. That's sugar. That's involved as well. So yes, it's producing dopamine, but you, without going into all the, well, that's my, I'm not a biologist, so I don't quite understand it, but you cannot produce dopamine without producing endorphin with alcohol. So yes, dopamine's involved, and yes, that's giving you that risk and that excitement and that buzz and everything else. Endorphin is doing the same thing, but by producing the endorphin, that then activates the dopamine, if that makes sense. So you by regulating and controlling the endorphin with naltrexone, it regulates and controls the dopamine.
Yeah, so the endorphin creates the long-term effects, the
yes,
the habit or the desire.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me.
There's a lot. I've done a lot of research and study on it, and it's actually quite difficult to figure out what the difference is, and I'm still trying to figure it out myself, to be honest with you. But what I have learned is that you can't produce the dopamine without the endorphin. So that's why if you regulate the endorphin, it regulates everything else. It doesn't regulate the GABA, it doesn't regulate the GLP-1 or the sugar side of it. But that's not what people are addicted to. That level of reward is here, for example, say 10%, whereas the endorphin rewards are up at 100%.
Wow. I mean, these just, I mean, what I really like about your content, and what I like that Adam and I do, is we are able to say we don't have all the answers. And I just think that's a super honest way to go about it. You talk to some other people and from other pathways, and they have it all figured out. And it's just not healthy for anybody.
Absolutely.
Remain teachable. Yeah. So I think you kind of touched on it a little bit. So what kind of success rates are you seeing with the Sinclair method? Obviously success is subjective to a lot of people. Some wouldn't call it success if you're going from 2 bottles of wine, a week to 1, but I do, cutting back any improvement, you know what I mean? Any improvement is a better lifestyle. So kind of what are you seeing as far as like your success rate? Because I know that's something that people are going to want to hear about.
The official research showed, or the research that Dr. Sinclair did showed that the Sinclair method had a 78% success rate. And that was for people who, I believe, had reduced their alcohol intake by 80% or more and had sustained it for more than 12 months. And so that was his definition. Like you said, I mean, there are so many different definitions of success and numbers that are thrown around and everything else. When I was in rehab, they would say in rehab the success rates were 70%, and I realized that it was 70% when people were in rehab, but there was about a 90% relapse when they left. That they didn't tell you the after they left, but
right.
Right. With us, I find that rather because like you said, abstinent-based models will describe it as pure abstinent. If you're not abstinent, then that's not success. So the way that we describe it is that the Sinclair method is not specifically about abstinence, unless someone wants to go to abstinence. It's about regaining control of your drinking. So it's a case of being able to have a drink or not have a drink genuinely, be able to have one and stop, or have 2 and stop, where the on-off button works. And I would say that 95% of our clients will continue to drink at some stage, at some level. The way that I kind of really battled with this one for ages, because I came from an abstinent-based background. My whole training was all to do with abstinent-based everything. And so I really struggled with the facts and figures. Yeah, you're just twisting numbers and you're just making it look good. You're selling a program and all this kind of stuff. So as a result, I started to realize that the way that I describe it now is every client that we work with that is 100% compliant with naltrexone, and we've worked with over 1,300 clients, I have never seen one relapse. Never seen one relapse. And what I mean by relapse is, let's say once someone gets more than about 60-70% reduction, I have never seen, as long as they stay compliant with the medication, I have never seen them go back to drinking what they were drinking at the start. And that takes away the figures and the arguments of, well, how do you judge your 78% and all that kind of stuff. I've even got to the stage with the Sinclair method, and this is in a very controlled environment with clients that we've worked with for a while, where I say to them, take your pill. I had a guy the other day drinking a bottle of scotch a day, and he said he was going to a wedding and he was really worried about the fact he might relapse at the wedding. I said to him, and I knew exactly, bear in mind, I've worked with him for a while, I've got a good idea of a situation. I said, take your pill, go to your wedding and crack on. Go and drink whatever you want to drink. Go and have a blowout. and drink. And in fact, I want you to try and drink as much as you can. Go and have a really good time. He came back on the Monday to me and he said, Bruce, I had 2 drinks. I had a third one later on at the night, and he said I wasn't interested. And he said I tried to relapse and I couldn't do it. And when someone says that to us, then you know, if you take someone that's been drinking a bottle of scotch, you have to give it. It only takes, here's a drink for it to. Do you know what I mean? It takes 3 days to have a relapse, and it would just blow completely. But I've never seen relapse, and I'm getting more and more and more confident now with people and saying, listen, people go on holidays on our program and say, Bruce, what do? I'm going on holiday. I'm saying, take your pill and go and have a good time. Go and crack on and have a good time.
Yeah. When
you come back, every single time that we see clients, for a good example, Christmas, they go to Christmas and we say, and our advice at Christmas is, as long as you take your pill, your drinking's going to go up. Just drink what you want over Christmas. When you get back after Christmas, your numbers will drop straight back to where they were before you went away. And that's to do with the rewiring of the pathway. But if they go on holiday, our advice is take your pill, go and drink whatever you want. But let's say they've had a 50% reduction already, they're not going to want to drink any more than that 50% anyway. But because I give them permission, not that they need my permission, but I say to them, listen, drink what you want. Because in their head, they're allowed to drink what they want. They've taken the naltrexone, the brain gets the lower reward. They just don't want to drink it anyway. And they say, Bruce, I've never had a holiday like that in my life. I just sit by the pool and drink. But because you give them permission, if you say to someone, you can't do this, watch me. Watch me. So with the naltrexone, it works as you can just say, listen, take your pill and go and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in there. I put this comment up on the screen there because you were answering Hexter's question pretty much with a number of anecdotes right there of people basically trying to get drunk with no consequences. The one thing that I want to just throw out there, though, the whole purpose is to we're not trying to drink to get drunk and not have consequences. That's, to me, that's that black or white thinking of, I still want to go get loaded, but I don't want any consequences. People who don't have an alcohol use problem still have consequences when they get drunk. So that, to me, that's a mindset issue there. But I just put that up there because I think you just nailed it with answering that.
Yeah. And it does come. I mean, we always say to clients that the addiction or the dependency is not your fault, but what someone does under the influence is their responsibility. So, and like you said, whether someone is dependent or not, then therefore they still have a responsibility. If you go and jump in a car and drive when you're drunk, then that's your responsibility, whether you're on naltrexone or not. Now, what we're trying to develop is that I always say we've got to bear in mind that for decades, centuries, the concept of just removing the alcohol out the equation on an abstinence-based program has a relapse rate of around about 90%. So the current model that we use through abstinent doesn't work for the majority. Now, it works very well for the people that it does work for. We support it 100%. But for the majority of people, it's not working. So at some point, we actually have to say, listen, there has to be another way of dealing. 90% of people are just in that hamster wheel of drink, sobriety, relapse, drink, sobriety, relapse. And it eventually, well, I can say it on here, but I'm so used to working on TikTok where you're not allowed to say certain words. It eventually will kill someone. Or break up marriages or health or work. So if you can bring someone to a level where they can have 1 or 2 drinks a week, when people get down to that level, they then can make a choice and say, actually, do you know what? I've decided I don't want to drink, so they stop drinking. Katie, for example, she got right the way down and just decided, I don't fancy drinking anymore. So yeah, absolutely, it comes with consequences. But if we then sort of say, well, we can't let people have a drink because of the consequences, we then revert back to abstinence, and then we're back into the 90% relapse. So yeah, I mean, the perfect solution is just stop drinking with no craving and nothing else. Absolutely. But the reality, we've got to face reality.
Yeah. And so one thing I like to point out too with my clients is relapse, and this is just a real abbreviated version of relapse. It's return to a previous condition. So, so many people come in because of the abstinence, universe that we live in. They'll be daily drinkers. They've been doing that for years, and they'll come in and they'll have 2-3 months of sobriety, and then they'll go out and they'll have a bad weekend, and they'll do it again, and they think all is lost. And it's like, guys, no, it is not. Did you come back into treatment today, and are you readdressing things? Yeah. Well, were you doing that in the years beforehand? No. Okay. So then it wasn't a relapse. You can call it whatever you want. Call it a slip. Call it lesson learned. I feel that's better. You know what I mean? So congratulations on the 29 years, Hexter. I appreciate you being here and popping in and asking that question. I mean, that was my first thought when I saw Hexter's comment about consequences. It's like, well, drinking doesn't bring consequences on itself outside of maybe some physical ones. But when you get behind the wheel of a car, that's a consequence, but that's naltrexone doesn't drive for you. So obviously that's not going to help you there.
Yeah. So. And a lot of people say to us, well, you're still encouraging people to drink. And I mean, we always say it's going to abstinence or controlled drinking. So what we'll do is we bring people right the way down to lower level. I mean, we drink, most people we work with are drinking one. There's a very specific neurological reason why it happens, but people will go to 1 or 2 drinks and then they just have a cutoff where they just don't want to drink more. And so and then we sort of say to people, well, now we have 3 different stages in our process. The last stage is now generating that freedom of attitude and mind towards alcohol, where it doesn't become this enemy, it doesn't become this thing that we've got to fight for the rest of our life. And that just gives people peace and freedom of mind and everything else, who can then go on and make their decision themselves. Okay, I don't want to drink, or I want to drink with an on-off button is the best way to describe it, because people that struggle don't have the on-off button. It doesn't work, and it just goes dum, 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 dum. And that's what we're trying to control. We're trying to get people out of that hamster wheel of one drink just turns into mayhem.
Yeah. I want to read this real quick. I won't say where it's from, but it's from a reading that's done quite often. It says, physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree that there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. They left the door open for this because they knew it was a possibility. And I just feel like the Sinclair Method is something that science may have accomplished to help this. And I believe it 100%, man. I really do. So I want to ask this too. Something that was thrown out. I was given naltrexone when I was trying to recover, and I never asked how much time you had, Bruce. So if you got to go, just let me know.
No, I'm good. It's Sunday here. I'm absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I was given naltrexone, and I was told that it would, I wouldn't feel the drunk. And that's what a lot of conceptions around here is, you won't feel drunk when you take it. I was prescribed to take it once a day, and I was taking it in the morning with my blood pressure medications and everything else. And so now, learning what I've learned from you and Katie, it's like, okay, well, I'd go to work and sweat my ass off, and then I'd come home, and the naltrexone had probably already worked through its magic, right? So The key, which you can elaborate on it, is 1 hour before the drink, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to be taking naltrexone. We don't use it in the UK, but you also have something called Vivitrol that's used in the States, which is an injection version of naltrexone. And again, we won't touch that in the UK. And unless we're working with someone who is on their own and they have no cognitive awareness to take the medication, then we might use it, very last scenario, for a month until we get a level of control and someone can then take the meds. But the whole idea of naltrexone was licensed in around about, I can never remember which one it was, about the 80s or the 90s. And it was licensed as an anti-craving medication. So it was prescribed and licensed, it was licensed to be used. The FDA as well in the States, they licensed it so it could be taken as an anti-craving medication for people who are abstinent. So therefore, you take your medication and it deals with the craving, and everything works out fine. Now, they realized after about 5 or 6 years that naltrexone doesn't work well as an anti-craving med. It just doesn't work. So then people were taking it as and they stopped using it. They've now since realized that you've got the opiate receptor reward system where naltrexone works on, and you've got the GABA receptor reward system, which is where the anti-craving medications work from. So they've realized that that's much more effective. So with the naltrexone, the whole idea of the naltrexone, the long-term success of the Sinclair method is purely and simply the rewiring of the neurological pathway in the brain. And that's what changes the habits, the behaviors, the thought patterns, all the thinking about alcohol constantly. If you can change those neurological pathways and rewire them, that will give you the long-term success without the craving and the white knuckling and the struggling and the addiction side of it. So if the whole idea is you take naltrexone an hour or an hour and a half before you consume alcohol, it sits on the receptor, it's at its highest efficacy at that level. You drink the alcohol, the brain then gets the huge endorphin reward, and it comes down and it hits the receptor, and it gets a much lower reward because naltrexone is sitting on it, and that rewires the pathway. Now, if you're taking naltrexone at 8 o'clock in the morning and then not having a drink till later on, most doctors and prescribers will recommend redosing again at about 6 hours. And so because by the time you get home, there is a 12-hour half-life on it, but it's quite a complicated thing to explain.
Sure.
But by the time you've got home, the effectiveness of the medication is nowhere near as much as it is. And people say, well, this doesn't work. It's like, well, under those circumstances, it doesn't. And that's why they stopped using it in the first place. But it's been around since the 90s.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I was told that I wouldn't know that I was even drunk. And so, I didn't give the medicine a fair shot, even taking it in the morning, because I was like, well, I just won't take the pill and I can get drunk. I would put it in my cheek, I'd spit it out, after the girlfriend is watching me do it, and I'd spit it and I wouldn't even do it. But yeah, I mean, the same thing would be for the Vivitrol shot, I would think too, right? You get it the first of the month, and then as the month goes on, it tapers down its effectiveness, and so it'd be really hard to gauge the shot too. So I think, there's obviously going to be a lot of discipline, but like you said, this isn't just take a pill and recover necessarily. This is, you still got your support groups, you still got your therapy if that's what you need. You still got to do all these other things to beat this thing. But I wanted to touch base on the Vivitrol shot because I've heard a lot of people say, yeah, I took this and, this is just going to save me. But that's just not, it's not going to stop.
How honest am I allowed to be on here?
As honest as you want, man. We want authenticity to
The Vivitrol shot, the reason we don't use it here is it's the Vivitrol shots make a lot more money for the people that sell them.
Well, shocker.
Sorry to say that, but and the reason for it, I mean, it's in your system 24/7, and the goal is to rewire the pathway in the brain.
Right.
So I don't know what it's like. It might be different in the States. Here in the UK, the medication that you can get for naltrexone is £80, which is probably about $100. So it's more expensive here than it is in the States.
Yeah.
It's a lot cheaper in the States. So it's $100 a month for the medication. The injection is $1,500.
Yeah.
Now it's not being as effective either. So our doctor here, who is probably one of the best in the UK, he said one, it's not as effective as it needs to be, which is the most important thing, and two, well, three things. The second thing is if someone has the side effects. One of our doctors prescribed the Vivitrol. They had a bad side effect to the Vivitrol. They ended up in hospital for about a month, because once it's in your system, you can't suck it back out again. And two, three, it's much better to have the targeted. You want to target the alcohol so the brain learns. If you're not learning anything through the neurological side, then it's pointless. And then you've got the behavioral side, the habits.
So I have a question that somebody posed. before we started the podcast, does one develop a tolerance to naltrexone? So will you have to take an increasing dose over the years or months or whatever, or I guess, is there tolerance developed in the body for the naltrexone?
No, there's no. I mean, there was one research paper that said that there was a buildup of tolerance, but research, depending on who's doing the research and where it's coming from, it can be slightly squinted, is the way to describe it. From our experience, that every single time someone has said to me that, oh, it's not working as well as it should be working, it's only ever two things that causes it. One is what we call intermittent compliancy, so where they're taking it occasionally or they're missing out occasionally and not taking it. And the second thing that goes under the radar completely, because no one is doing the support side of the program with it. So many people are taking a pill and expecting it to last, taking the pill and expecting it to last. Sorry, I'll just backtrack a little bit. I've got a lady at the moment I'm working with who is just going through a divorce. She's gone through a pretty heavy divorce with her husband. Now, she's been on naltrexone and been doing really, really well. And now she's actually going through the divorce and everything. Her drinking has gone up a little bit. So most people in that scenario would then turn around and go, oh, the medication's not working anymore. What's happening? What's going on? But when you realize that there's a big difference between, there's two sides to AUD. One side is the neurological addiction to the endorphin. The other side is the habitual things that go on in life, and also events and circumstances. So this lady, she had dropped by 80%, I think, and now it's gone back up to about 60%. And she's going, oh, what's going on? What's going on? And I sat down with her the other day and I said, right, let's talk this through. I said, you've gone through so much stuff. There's arguments and fights and everything going on in the marriage. And I said, so what you're now doing is you're reverting back to your old habitual ways of dealing with a highly charged emotional situation. So as a result of that, her drinking has gone up because she's not currently at the stage where she has changed and adapted to emotionally and psychologically. So she's still reverting to the old pattern of drinking more. But when we had a look at how much she was drinking as a result of stress, compared to what she used to drink, it was huge differences. And she actually went, wow, she said, if this had been a year ago, I would have just hit the bottle. That would be me for 6 months, and I would have just gone bang. But the fact that I can only have, and when she was saying that, she said, I've lost it, Bruce. And when she said she lost it, she was having 3 glasses of wine in the night instead of 1. Whereas before, she was drinking a bottle of vodka.
Right.
So, and I said, well, why didn't you go and drink a bottle of vodka? If the meds wasn't working, you'd be going back to drinking a bottle of vodka. And I said, please, I said, I've worked with it long enough. I call it ride the wave. I said, take your pill right now. You don't want to make any changes. Just keep taking your pill. Deal with your life scenario, your life situation that's really stressed. In a month's time, when that all calms down, every client I've worked with, it drops straight back to where it was before. So it's not a medication issue. It's a lifestyle. It's a life situation or circumstance, or an increase in stress, or non-compliancy with the medication.
Man, so yeah, the environment and universe that the abstinence-based programs have created, we wouldn't treat anything else like this, right? So if I'm eating McDonald's every single day of my life, and I stopped eating McDonald's 7 days a week, and I dropped it down to 4, I would be celebrated for doing a great job at changing my lifestyle, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I was having sex with a different woman every day of the week, and I decided to get married, or cut it down to 3, people would be like, hey, you're not a sexaholic anymore. You know what I mean? Like, we don't do this in anything else. We are insistent because of, something that was created 90 years ago. We are insistent on its failure if you do it even a little bit. And it's just ridiculous, man. I mean, what people don't need to understand is, like, for me, like, what was going on in here, I didn't like this guy very much, and I needed to drink for survival. The only thing that made me feel good was getting that drink, was planning the drink, getting the drink, hiding the drink. Those are all giving me these feel-good things that I needed to survive. And sure, would I did some bad things? Yeah, but I wasn't a bad friggin' person, but, okay. So, it's just a great point. It went from, I can't remember what you said, but it's like 30% to 60%. She went back up, a little bit. Instead of, one glass of wine, it was 3. And it's like, that ain't a freaking bottle of vodka. So let's take the wins where you can get it, because this shit's hard. If we would have figured this out, if we had it figured out, then we would have figured it out. Well, we haven't. So we got to take the wins where we can get it. Excuse me.
I had a lady who, I'll never forget her. She phoned me up 2 days before Christmas, and she said, Bruce, and she was down to having 1 or 2 glasses of wine a week, and from about 2 bottles of wine a day. And she was no craving, no white knuckling, nothing. She phoned me up 2 days before Christmas, and she went, Bruce, I've lost my mum and dad in the space of 2 days. And I went thinking, man alive, how do you do that? She said, I don't know what to do. She said, I just want to go and have a blowout. And I said to her, listen, and I said, please, please, please trust me on this one. I've done this for a while now. I said, take your pill. And as long as you are safe, you're not driving, you're not drinking to blackout, that you're safe in your environment with the alcohol, just go and drink whatever you need to drink over the next few days. Because right now, just take your pill. You need to look after you, and it's survival, pure survival. So I said to her, just take your pill and drink whatever you want to drink. She phoned me back Boxing Day. I'll never forget it. And she said, you will not believe what's happened, Bruce. And I'm thinking, she's gone crazy and she's gone bottles of vodka and everything else. She said, on day 1, I had a bottle of wine. And she said, I really struggled to get it down me. On day 2, which was, I think, Christmas Day, she said, I had, which was going to be the hardest of them all. She said, I had 2 glasses of wine just before I went to bed to help me sleep. And she said, today, she said, I'm not really that fussed about having a drink. And then I spoke to her a month later and I said, how are you feeling and stuff? And she said, it was the hardest time of my life. But the fact that I knew that alcohol was not an issue, that I could, when you said to me, just drink what you want, trust the process. She said, beforehand, it would just been, I would have dived into a bottle of vodka or 2 bottles, 3 bottles of wine. She said, I knew this time, now I've got this horrible scenario of losing my parents, but I don't have to worry about the alcohol because it has been described sometimes that I've got my condom of naltrexone that's not going to, it's going to save me and protect me. I know that I don't have to worry about the alcohol. I can live. I just need to deal with some stuff. And she said, I went through the grieving process naturally, which wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. But she said, I went through it and it was much healthier to do that than it was before. And if she'd been on abstinence, she would have had a drink and that would have been it.
Yeah.
And there are so many, when you dive into the actual stories of people and how it's affecting it in reality, that there's the theory of it all, and it all sounds great. But when you see the reality of it working with people, honestly, it is mind-blowing. The fact that it's not the number one go-to model today is criminal.
Yeah. Amen.
It is absolutely criminal.
Yeah. Amen. Because imagine if she was a part of an abstinence-based pathway and all that terrible things happened in 2 days to her, and then she went and drank, the guilt and shame that she would have carried going into, going back to the people that are supposed to be there and supporting her and helping her and picking up a new 24 chip. You know what I'm saying? Like, how terrible would that be? Absolutely awful. This is, I like to say this because it pisses off the right people. My recovery started in, I have, if I was in a different group right now, my sobriety date would be September 11th, 2022. But what it really was in January of that year when I decided to put myself into treatment and make changes in my life. All the drinking that I did between those days is a non-issue. I made changes that day, and that's when my recovery began. And they don't like that because there was a lot of drinking. There was actually a really bad month in there. But you know what? That's when it all started. I made a decision to change, and whether that your decision involves going to meetings or going to treatment or taking naltrexone or Vivitrol shot or whatever, getting on Suboxone if you're using opiates, the moment that you decide to use that, all these little learning lessons and these hiccups or slips or whatever, it's just part of the journey. And if you learn from it and get back on the horse and you continue it, you've been winning since you made that decision. That's just my opinion. And I think that's more fair. And I think it's more realistic, to be honest.
And one of the most absolutely mind-blowing things that I've learned is when I worked in rehab, and this one gets me into a lot of trouble as well. People don't like me in certain places.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, but it's only certain places. But I've always been taught and trained. When I used to manage rehab centers, and we were always taught in abstinence-based models that trauma is the cause of addiction. Everything is trauma-based, and I battled with this one for ages and ages, and I thought, what's going on here? And everything that I was taught in rehab, people drink because of trauma. And then every single client I was working with, we have probably 10% of our clients who then go on to therapy, professional therapy, counseling, all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, are the other 90% just in denial, or what's going on here? And I started to realize, and as I started to work through the process, I realized that every single person will start to drink or take drugs. I took drugs for a reason. Everyone starts to drink at a higher level for a reason, whether it's a childhood thing, whether it's a breakdown, whether it's a divorce. Some people, it's just a work scenario. People are working every day and they're socializing with clients and drinking more. So the reason why someone drinks is during a period of divorce, let's use, for example, the amount of alcohol consumption increases during that period to numb out and to deal with it. So, but when you understand the neurological process, what then happens is that the brain is now receiving much more endorphin as a result of that period of higher drinking. COVID was a pure example of it. Now, during that process of drinking more to deal with the why, the brain starts to trip over into dependency to the endorphin. Now, once the brain becomes addicted or dependent to the endorphin, the reason people are pursuing alcohol on a daily basis is not because of the reason why. It's because if the brain doesn't get that endorphin, it's going to kick and fight and scream, and it's going to battle you till it's blue in the face. I took drugs initially for a reason, to escape. 6 months into taking my drugs, when I'm walking the streets at 2 o'clock trying to find a dealer, it's got nothing to do with why I started. It's because my brain is screaming, I need coke, I need speed, I need whatever it is that I'm needing, and it's pursuing that. So then all of a sudden you then realize that the minute the brain becomes dependent on the endorphin, it now becomes two very, very separate issues. So, and that doesn't mean that people don't need to deal with that underlying why. It just means that there isn't. I've started to realize, my wife is a counselor, and we will send people to counselors, but you will never counsel someone out of addiction. And that one gets me into trouble in lots of places, because that's emotional and psychological. Now, it doesn't mean that people don't need counseling. People need counseling, but if you're expecting the counseling to deal with the addiction, it's never going to happen. Never going to happen, because the addiction is to the endorphin, and it's a neurological process. So we need to deal with that in the first instance. And when you can then deal with the neurological process and the addiction to the endorphin, regain control of that, reduce the alcohol down, now the individual has no craving, no white knuckling, and they're not sitting through a counseling session going, when can I get my next drink? When can I get my next drink? And they don't hear anything that goes on in the counseling. Now they're in a position where they've got the drink under control. Now I can deal with the counseling. Now, if I need counseling, but majority of people, when they get down there, life has moved on 10, 20, 30 years, and they don't necessarily need the counseling. Right. And it's amazing how many people don't. They just move on and deal with it. Whereas in the abstinence-based world, we are told the reason that you're relapsing is because our whole structure is built on everything is to do with willpower. The minute that you relapse, well, hang on a minute, we need to find the reason why you've relapsed. And the only way to explain it is to turn it around and go, it's your fault. It's your fault. Oh, there must be some underlying emotion. There's got to be something deep inside of you that is causing you to relapse. Well, no, it's not. It's just I've got a neurological condition. It's like I've got epilepsy. I used to have seizures. If people said to me, well, the reason you're having seizures is because you're not getting enough counseling, or you're not going through your, how do I word this, the program properly.
Yeah.
You're not going through your program properly. But well, hang on, no, I've got a medical condition. There's medication available. Can I just have the medication? No, you can't have that. You've got to go to a group every week. You've got to sit there and say, my name is Bruce and I'm an epileptic.
Right.
Why?
Yeah. So they're I'll go ahead and step out into the fire a little bit on that one. That makes no sense, right? That's silly. Why would anybody go to a meeting and say, I have seizures as well, Bruce? And so it's like, why would I go? I'm Scott, I'm epileptic. And that's silly. But you know what else is silly? When you go into a room and you're told that you don't need counseling and you don't need medication, you just need to work these steps. That's fucking silly. That'll solve all your problems. That is asinine. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, I'll try to reel that one back in, but I get pretty fired up too, because I hear that all the time. There are so many clients that come in and they go in and they're on MAT, they're taking Suboxone for the opioids or whatever, and they'll go into these meetings and they're told that they're not sober because they're doing that. You know what I mean? It's like, you want to say that I'm killing people because I'm talking openly about other ways of doing this thing. You are going to kill people for making them feel worse for everything that they've ever done in their life, and revisiting that over and over again, by going through these steps or whatever. Man, all right, I'll rein it back in. First of all, real quick, I want to say congratulations to my buddy RJ. We were in treatment together for a little bit, 3.5 years sober, my friend. That is awesome. So happy for you. Things have really turned around, and I'm glad you're here watching today. I appreciate the support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go down here. Okay, well, here's a question right in the chat before I get to the one that I have written down. Does naltrexone work for other addictions as well? Sex, gambling, food, etc.
Does it work? Oh, I hate this question. Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Yes. The issue with it is the question to ask is the addiction working off the opiate reward system?
Exactly.
So if the addiction is working off the opiate reward system, which is what all the stuff that you've mentioned, I've got to be really careful how I say this. Then naltrexone will work. But the only way that naltrexone works is through taking the medication, waiting an hour, and having a drink. Now, I'll use gambling, for example. Gambling is one of the worst addictions out there. It's horrible. And does naltrexone work for gambling? There hasn't been the huge research in any of these areas to show that it will work for it. But we know through lots of Dr. Sinclair's work that he did that it will work in any area of opiate reward. So, however, we can't say to someone, take your pill, wait an hour, and then go to the betting shop or put a bet on, because that can be anything from $5 to your house. Now, if it's sex, you can't say to someone, well, listen, take your pill, wait an hour, and then, because you can't guarantee that what someone's doing is illegal or legal or whatever it is.
Sure.
When it comes to other substances, illegal substances, again, I know for a fact that it works in certain areas very well, but we can't advise that someone take your pill, wait an hour, and then use a substance that's illegal. Now, it will. You're going to be so careful, because then people go and find naltrexone to deal with it.
Sure.
But there's very, very strong evidence that under very, very controlled medical environment controlled system, that the process would work for heroin. There's no reason why it shouldn't. But again, you can't say take your pill, wait an hour, and go and shoot up.
Right.
If it was done in a controlled environment, then I genuinely believe it would do. I don't know what it's like in the States in the States, but alcohol and cocaine, very, very common here in the UK. It might have been a few years ago in the States. We're a bit behind you here. But again, example of a lot of clients that haven't declared that to us in the first stage have then said to us it works perfectly in that area as well. But it needs to just be done with caution on the other areas.
Well, I'll try to get everybody out of here in the next couple minutes if you guys don't mind hanging on just for a minute. Working where I work, 90% of the people, they walk right down the street from the court office into our office because they're court ordered to do a substance use evaluation. And it's like, they are coming in off, being daily drinkers or users, and then they're threatened with a cage if they don't submit and go abstinent for 6 months, a year, whatever. I just wish that for the alcoholics like myself out there and other drug users who've got plenty of cocaine, like you said, I wish they would be given the opportunity to do something like this, because I think there would be a lot less serious probation violations. You know what I mean? There'd be a lot less, because you're taking this neurological thing and you're cycling them through the system over and over again. They get a little ways, and then they have a bad weekend, they test positive, and now they're in jail for a weekend or 5 days, and now their life is worse because they had a job, maybe they don't have it anymore, now they got to pay more fines. It's just a goddamn fucking cycle, and I just wish we could give something like this a chance. The system is completely hijacked by the abstinence system, and it's sad to me because there are so many good people, and I can't say much more than that. There's a recent event that happened at work that broke my fucking heart. A really good person struggling really hard with other things, and including the neurological, mostly the neurological thing. You know what I mean? Like, just his brain is hijacked, and it's telling him and convincing him, just like that he needs it, right? Just like you're in your own home and the lights are off. Your brain is trying to predict everything. Something's around the corner. That's survival from millions of years of us evolving. Just trying to stay alive, and his brain is just doing that. And now this guy is going to go back to jail because he succumbed to his brain, and in a basic sense, right? It's just so freaking sad to me.
And I always say it's like the epilepsy. He had a seizure, and he's being blamed for it. And I haven't had a seizure for 20 years. And when I did have them, I'd have an ambulance. I'd be taken down to hospital. I'd get the best care. I'd get best doctors. My wife would be there. Everything would be so supportive and so everything else. But because I had a medical condition, why? I mean, so many other different areas. They'll tell you it's an illness. It's a disease. People say to me, "Oh, it's an illness." Yes, but Bruce, it's an illness. I've got the illness. And I say, well, okay, if it's an illness, why is it the only illness that I know of in the world that you don't treat with medication in the first instance? Now, yes, it needs other work and it needs other support. So why, if I go to the doctor with asthma, epilepsy, arthritis, all of those things, and the doctor says to me, well, listen, I'm sorry, Bruce, we have developed medications to deal with that, but I want you to go to your local support group. And it's why do we do it with alcohol? I mean, it's
I say the same thing all the time because I get the rebuttal back about cancer patients, diabetics. They all start with a treatment of medicine or some type of way to fix it physically, in this case, neurologically, and then we work on lifestyle. You got to have both, and I completely 100% back that statement.
Yeah. And if you regulate and control, when you realize, I say to people, just go and do 10 minutes of research, the biological research of what happens when you put alcohol in your body. It goes into the stomach, it goes into the lower intestine. You can go into as much detail as you want, and then it comes out into the blood, around the body, and up to the brain. When it then produces endorphin. And then I said, now go and research endorphin. What does that do? Is it addictive? And whoa, straight away you go, wow, okay, endorphin's the issue.
It's an opiate.
And when you realize that that's the issue, and every other program in the world, if you go on a TikTok and social media and every program out there, is all about stop drinking, willpower, whether it's horse therapy, water therapies, whatever. Now, they work for some people, and the people that they work for, we have to encourage and support it completely.
100%. 100%.
Because if it saves one life, then I worked in rehab, and we had 1 in 10 guys that came through rehab that it worked for. And for those 1 guys, I've met a guy just recently, still sober today, and he's married, he's got a kid on the way. Best thing that has ever happened for him, and for that reason, we need to keep the rehabs open.
Hell yeah.
So it's not a case of one's better than the other and everything else, but it's trying to find what's right for the individual.
I think to the entire point of the whole conversation we've had for the last hour is that if you found something that works for you, then it means it is giving you the higher amount of endorphin that your brain needs. We're all wired differently. So if going and horseback riding and horse therapy or whatever you do gives you that endorphin rush that you need, that's going to work for you.
Yeah. And it depends on the level of dependency. I mean, some people can be, someone could be dependent on, we get some people that are just drinking a bottle of wine a day up to a bottle of scotch a day plus. And so everyone's at a different scenario and different situation, and their background, their life, their current circumstances. Yes, there is a medical solution to it, but there's also there's an environment, and that's where the support side of it comes into it really handy. But it's like anything else. If you take all the abstinent-based program and drop a little bomb into it and just throw naltrexone into the middle of it, they would be the best programs you've ever met.
Yeah,
they would revolutionize alcohol recovery overnight.
And that's when Adam and I do these things, we're always talking about, if it works for you, do it. Absolutely. We support you 100%. If that's going to a meeting every day of the rest of your life, then please do that. That is awesome. We support it, but you got to ask yourself, if you get mad when people like us have these other conversations and present other pathways, if that upsets you and that really makes you mad, did you trade one addiction for another? Is that possible? You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of acting like somebody's trying to take your bottle away, and nobody's trying to take away your bottle right now. You have your program and enjoy it. I enjoyed AA for a hot minute. A couple of years. I got big books that look like rainbows with all the highlights and everything that I've been through it 100 times. I loved it. In fact, the words came out of my mouth that I think everybody should go to AA because I think it would help everybody. I've said that nonsense. I've grown since then, and that's okay. I am totally happy that everybody that's doing it and put the shit behind them and got back control of their life and regained their power, because you can regain your power. I'm sorry, you're not eternally powerless. That's silly. I'm so happy that people have done that. I have to ask you one more thing, Bruce, because I promised this guy that I would. For people who have tried traditional sobriety and failed, what's the biggest misconception about the Sinclair method that keeps them from giving it a real try?
Sorry, say that again. I missed that second.
I probably read it funny too. For people who've tried traditional sobriety and failed, what's the biggest misconception about the Sinclair method that keeps them from giving it a real shot?
The abstinence is the only option.
Yeah.
That's what we live in a society, and we live in medicine, like even doctors, all the solutions, families, everything. Because we've lived in that environment for years, we live in this whole process of black and white scenario. When you're not drinking too much, or it's not causing an issue in the family, then, hey, let's go out and party at the weekend, let's have fun. Now, the minute it becomes a problem, all of a sudden, the focus goes on the individual. And then the only solution at the moment is stop drinking and never drink again. Now, like we're saying, if that will work, if that works for someone, listen, absolutely fantastic. But it doesn't work for the majority. So it doesn't mean we have to stop them or say they're no good, but we need to find a solution for the majority, not the minority. And most people will come to us and say, well, abstinence is the option, and we get it, loads of things. What you're telling people is dangerous. What you're saying is dangerous, and it's like, well, I could go onto loads of things with that one, but it's abstinence is not the only option. Abstinence is a great option if people can do it. And if someone is sitting there and relapsing, and I call it the hamster wheel of stop sobriety relapse, drink sobriety relapse. If someone's on that cycle and they've tried abstinent 2 or 3 times and it's not worked, at some point we have to put up our hand and say, right, we're not here to blame AA or CA or NA or smart groups or rehabs. It's a case of, listen, right now that's not working for me, and it's not my fault. First and foremost, it's not my fault. Is there another option that would work for me? And if there is, then it's not a case of AA is better than the Sinclair Method or the Sinclair Method is better than the AA. If that will work, use it. And it's like, we've got to stop all this fighting and battling.
Yes.
It's like, however, in my defense, this is our attitude with everything. It's a case of anything works, but it's normally it comes the other way, where we're that sometimes it doesn't go down too well what we do.
No, and so if you're hearing this and you think the Sinclair Method might be something for you, talk with your doctor about it. But the key thing is, I was given Antabuse, which is a drug that'll make you sick. If you don't take the damn pill, it's not going to work. So you have to be ready to make that commitment. That's the key to this, I think. There has to be some self-discipline. You have to be really ready, because I'm going to steal your term, Bruce, my endorphinaholic brain is like, ooh, I get to drink. And so I forgot my pill today, right? So like, if you're not ready to commit to this thing, just like anything else, if you're not ready to commit to it, it's not going to work.
The one thing that people say to us, say, well, and it shook me when I first hear it. Someone said to me, they said, well, that relies on someone taking a pill, Bruce, for it to work. And that really kind of shook me initially. And I went and I said, yeah, but abstinent relies on someone not having a drink for it to work. And people will take the pill.
Even harder.
The one thing that I realized from working in rehab and working in TSM and in any area of alcohol recovery is there is not one person in this world who is struggling with alcohol that doesn't want a solution. It's not a case of, oh, I'm doing this for the fun. They would give you their left hand to get rid of it. It's just that they've tried stopping and starting and stopping and starting. And each time they relapse, there's more guilt, there's more shame. They have to go through detoxes and all that kind of stuff. So eventually they give up giving up. So I don't think there's a case of people not wanting to drink. Now, the 78% success rate that the clinical trials were showing, the 22% that it didn't work for were specifically people who didn't take the medication. And so you can read between the lines on that one. And the reason that you get the 22% is it's normally a partner has pushed someone onto the program. We get a little bit of it in this country where the court has sent someone along. So they've got a court case coming up. So they take the medication and say, I'm on a program. Or a family member has pushed them onto it, or they've kind of thought, well, we'll give it a try for a week or two and see what happens. So you'll always have that, and there's no way around that one. But for the 78% of people who say, yep, okay, I need to do something about this, then it makes a huge difference.
That's a great point, and I feel bad about what I said now, because going back to me before I was ready to make changes in my life, if somebody would have said, all right, you got to go to these meetings and do therapy and stop drinking right now forever, or you can take this pill and we can work on this thing gradually, I know for a fact that I would have jumped on it and made an effort. And then, like you said, if I continue to do that and just take that pill, eventually things start to rewire and it kind of starts working itself out. So,
and one of the biggest battles with people is that when they're faced with and that's why people have to hit rock bottom, is because they're faced with a solution in life. The only solution is stop drinking and never drink again. And most people really struggle with that concept.
Yeah.
And that's why people wait and wait and wait and wait, especially us guys, that we'll wait and wait and wait, and until it hits rock bottom. Now, when someone is in a scenario where they can continue to drink if they want to, then all of a sudden, well, yeah, okay, I can take a pill. And then all of a sudden they realize it started to working, and the brain's getting a lower reward. And the brain naturally, with naltrexone and the Sinclair Method, it's not a case of willpower. It's a case of that's where the program comes in. If we reduce someone gradually, every time I speak to a client and we've made a little more reduction, I'm saying to them, how are you managing? How are you coping? Yep, no problem, Bruce. Right, let's move to the next stage. The minute they say to me, I'm struggling, Bruce, I'm starting to white knuckle this a little bit, that tells me we're moving that client too much too quickly. So we actually have to come back up again. So the whole reduction, I won't bore you too much, but there's, anyway, Dr. Sinclair did research on craving. The craving from naltrexone will last for 90 to 100 days. So after 90 to 100 days, the craving, the addiction is gone. So then it becomes about habit. So in that 90 to 100 days, if you reduce too much too quickly and you go ahead of the craving, the drinking is going to go back up again. So you need to reduce gradually over the 90 to 100 days for that period, so that it becomes the easiest. And when it's done properly, clients will say to us, Bruce, that's the easiest thing I've ever done. I feel like I've cheated the whole process. And it's because there is, the only reason people struggle is when you'll get people who'll try a reduction program without naltrexone, but every time that you reduce 20% on without naltrexone, the craving is kicking in at the back of it. So the craving is building up. So they'll then reduce a little bit more, and eventually the craving will equal the reduction, and the seesaw effect kicks in, and the drinking goes back up. But when you're taking naltrexone on that reduction, if you do it gradually over 90 to 100 days in a controlled manner, then when the craving is at the bottom, after 90 days, there's no craving kicking in. So if people are drinking at that level, they're drinking, we know that they're drinking because of habit, situation, or circumstance, or habitual responses to emotional scenarios. Now we can deal with that. And there's no craving, there's no addiction, there's nothing kicking in at the back that's going to fight the individual. It's just, it then becomes a psychological thing. So
this might have to be the only podcast that we've done that I'm going to have to go and watch it again just to absorb all this stuff. I've never rewatched one of my own podcasts, but I'm going to, because this is, I got into the recovery coaching to try to help people, and I just think this is something that really could help. You know what I mean? I really do. I think it can really change people's lives. It's such an option that needs to be explored. I just wish people weren't so scared. Look, I talk gooder. Weren't so afraid of it. You know what I mean? We had it pounded into our minds that there's only one way to do this thing, and if you do it a different way, then you're not doing it right, and you're going to fail, and it's just terrible. So,
and it's such a. I don't know. I'm more excited about it, and I've heard about it 7 years ago. I'm more excited about the potential of it. I mean, you see where naltrexone was 7 years ago in the States. I mean, it's come on leaps and bounds now, but we are watching client after client after client after client after client beat their addiction, and it's not just one or two. And this is not me being salesman, and we are under talking the success of it. When I go on TikTok, I under talk the success, because if I told people what was really happening, then they don't believe me as it is, let alone what's really happening. And that's not us. I mean, there's Katie in the States, there's Claudia Christian, she's an amazing lady. It's happening all over the world, so it's not just us. I mean, it's mind blowing.
Oh yeah, this whole thing is mind blowing, and I hope it's mind opening for everybody that sits and listens to this thing. Adam, you got anything to add before we?
I just want to say I feel like a lot of, I guess, some of my own personal theories and ideas about what addiction is, what alcohol use disorder, alcoholism is, how to overcome it, have been either solidified, or some of the missing pieces that I would have been trying to find. I got the answers for with kind of addiction endorphins versus dopamine and stuff like that. I'm very much into the neurological side of it, as the physical mechanism, so to speak, if there is a physical side to it. So I'm with you, Scott. I think I'll probably go back and re-listen to this one, because I've got a ton of notes and questions that I've asked myself. I've been writing down. I'm going to go back through and keep going. You've given me a lot of things to think about and to explore. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Bruce, go ahead if you want to and tell people where they can find more of your content. I love your stuff on TikTok. Go ahead and plug it if you want.
Yeah, well, it's rethinkdrink.co.uk is the website, and we're on all the socials. Rethink, just at Rethink Drink. So Facebook. The only one we're not on yet is X, and I was actually just signing up for it right now, as just before we came on here. So we're on all the others, TikTok and everything else. We do live TikToks, or I do a live TikTok, 7:30 to 8:30 UK time in the morning, though. So it's probably, we do get some, depending on where people are in the States, we get a lot of guys from the States joining us last thing at night.
Awesome.
Yeah. When I wake up in the middle of the night, I look to see if Bruce is doing a live, and I've listened in the middle of the night before because got nothing else to do, and it's informational. Yeah. No, God, no. That is not. No, it's like, oh man, I better shut this off and go back to bed, or I'm going to be up all night thinking.
Can I also thank you as well for your support and your comments and everything else on TikTok, because it's nice to have a small support team on there, because we do get a little bit of we call it flack in this country. I don't know what you call it in the States.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. That's a good word. Well, I believe in what you're doing, man. I believe that you're a genuine human being, a good human being, and I believe that this method could save people's lives, and that's what the goal is. You know what I mean? I just to help somebody get out of the misery that I was once in. That's my goal. That's why I do this podcast. And if we can find something that clicks with somebody, even sharing my experience with other programs, that's a great move. That's what we're trying to do. So,
and the main thing with the Sinclair Method is that it's not it works very well for a lot of people, but it's not the be all and end all of everything. And I think the thing that we've learned from past organizations going forward is that we have to make sure that there is a wide range of options available.
Yeah,
for people.
Absolutely, because every single person's different, right? So it's like one size fits all is not for everybody. Before we sign off, I just want to say good luck to you, Ellie. I lost it real quick. Anyway, she's 6 months. Oh, right here. Got my permit last week. Going to go for full license in 6 months. I'm going to do an evaluation here soon, and I'm going to try to make that effort to get my driving abilities to restored, and that's really going to open doors for me. So fingers crossed on that one. If you got the willingness to do so for me. So, Bruce, thank you, sir. I look forward to talking again in the future. I hope. Adam.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Adam, we'll talk later, I'm sure, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Everybody, thanks for listening. We had about 50 people, Bruce, on X, so you got a good start on getting that account going.
We'll get it. Well, we'll be a Rethink Drink on X if that's. I don't know how X works, but I just today for some reason I thought I need to go and work out how that works. So.
Well, I'll be finding you here in a minute then. So
absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day.